Hey, what's up guys, Coach Luca here. Today what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about different methods to develop your cardio and conditioning. Everything from aerobic conditioning, anaerobic galactic, like all these names. But the point is, I'm gonna show you some methods that you can use and just make sense around all of this, because there's a lot of confusion about, everybody just coupling cardio into the same thing. So you're gonna see this stuff, we're gonna go through it a little bit, and you're gonna see me suffer a little bit. All right, so here we are. Okay, what we're gonna do today, first of all, this is, cardio is this word that just gets bundled all together. Cardio, conditioning. Hey man, did you do any cardio? Everything gets put kind of like in the same bucket. And what I want to go over today is show you some different methods to develop cardio and kind of understanding behind it. Now, we're not gonna get too geeky. I highly recommend that you, number one, get the book called MMA Conditioning from Joel Jamieson, my brother from another mother. And the thing is, even though it says MMA Conditioning, it's not really, it's just a very, probably one of the most thorough book on conditioning out there. And, or even better, if you're a coach and you kind of want to get geeky and get really good at creating programs for your clients that make them more resilient, more conditioned, more fit, fat loss, everything. It's the BioForce 8-week condition course, the best course out there, period. So it's a little plug, and honestly, Joel's a great friend, but I've learned so much from him, and a lot of this, it comes from the knowledge and the methods that I've learned from him. So with that said, I'm also plugged up to a Morpheus, so you guys will see my kind of heart rate. You can see it's low right now, but trust me, it's gonna go up. Because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over different methods, starting with 8 aerobic training methods that you can do to improve your conditioning. Now, once again, I'm gonna put this down here for a second. Heart rate's already up just talking explosively to you guys. But what is conditioning? Well, cardio is just a measure of how well an athlete / client / human being is able to meet the energy production needs of their sport, right? And the thing is, if you could replace sport with just life, okay? What do you need to do in life? And most people, first of all, cardio is very closely related to health, right? The people that have the best cardio actually live 10% longer. This is statistics. So there's, I'm gonna go way beyond, most people are like, oh, cardio is for fat loss. There is no such thing things burn calories, whether it's strength training, whether it's conditioning, all of those different things burn calories. And obviously we improve our nutrition and our lifestyle to make sure that we burn more calories than we take in, essentially. That's what leads to fat loss, or should I say, fat loss and weight loss. But when we look at cardio, it's what are the specific demands of the sport or life that we want to develop? And an aerobic base, everybody should do it, because it helps you recover faster. It's better for health in general, from your blood pumping, your heart pumping blood throughout, I would say, your body, as well as delivering oxygen to the muscles and all these basic things, right? So when you ask yourself a question, because for instance, American football player, right? It's American football because I'm from Europe, so we got the real football. But the point is, most of those guys have to create 10 to 12 seconds of explosiveness, followed by a 30 to 60 second break. So being conditioned for them is different than an MMA fighter that's got 3 5-minute rounds of a combination of super explosive movements followed by a little bit less explosive movements, right? It's very challenging. An ultra endurance runner, different. But for the average person, I think that they should develop all these different cardiovascular systems to be the most fit and the healthiest possible. And if your goal is building muscle, this will help you out. If your goal is being able to do stuff, go play basketball with your kids, hike for 8 hours, you want to develop these different systems. For fat loss, it will help you with that as well. So we're going into that, and here's a hint. If there's something that you do for longer than 60 seconds, if it's a sport, so basketball, soccer, rugby, tennis, you name it, right? If it has more than 60 seconds of activity, it's gonna have a huge aerobic component to it, okay? And so with that said, we're gonna dive into this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna break down different methods that build, I would say, aerobic conditioning and different types of it, okay? And I'm gonna go through them. I'm gonna show you, because once again, I think it's the best to kind of learn through showing stuff, and you guys will see my heart rate as well as I'm doing things, because we'll be eliciting different ranges of my heart rate for each thing. Now, I'm not gonna go through a full-blown workout of each one of these because that would take 7 days and I'd be crushed, but I will be putting in some work and you guys will see me put in some work. All right, so the first method I'm gonna go over is the cardiac output method. Now, most people know this one because that's like, in MMA or in fight sports, it's called road work. But for most people to understand it as long, steady state cardio. That's the stuff that where, you go into the gym, you're on the bike, or you're just running, for at a slow tempo for long periods of time, or whatever else that you're doing. So check this out. Okay, it got a bad rap. Okay, it got a bad rap. It used to be the thing, and then it was like, oh no, high intensity training is much more effective for fat loss. Not understanding that it has a very, very, very important, I would say, function, which is it increases heart rate stroke volume. What that means is it pumps blood. Think of it this way, like if your heart is a balloon, right? Like you're able to, the bigger the balloon, the more blood you can pump out into your body, which is a good thing, right? So it's called eccentric cardiac hypertrophy. Ooh, I know, a geeky word, right? But it's very, very important for health purposes because when you do high intensity intervals, it doesn't do the same thing. It creates concentric hypertrophy. It makes the thickness of your heart wall bigger. It doesn't make the balloon bigger, it makes the thickness bigger. And if you only do that, it's actually not very healthy if you don't combine it with the other one. So there's a health purpose for this. And also, it develops the heart and vascular network. So imagine that, like, if my heart can pump more blood faster and more oxygen to my muscles, I can recover faster. I can recover faster in between training sessions. I can recover faster in between sets, right? So that's a very, very important thing. It also helps with lower resting heart rates, lower working heart rates, right? So when you're doing stuff, it lowers your heart rate, and also greater cardiac efficiency. All very, very good things. Like we know, like if you're waking up and you got a super high heart rate, like not the most healthy thing, probably also nervous system is being crushed, right? This also increases transport to oxygen transport to working muscles. So here's the thing. You do have to do at least 30 minutes of this to develop it. So that's what the science proves. 60 to 90 is better, okay? At about 30 to 150 beats per minute, 1 to 3 times a week. Now, I would say that a person should do it at least 1 time a week. And this is why I love things like, like hiking and certain activities that puts you at 130 to 150 beats per minute. But if it's too high, then it's not the cardiac output method anymore. So simple things that you guys know. Doing something like an airdyne bike. Going for a hike, right? Because it becomes more challenging, your heart rate comes up. Things like slow, steady state running. It could be like bag work, right? So if I'm a fighter, I could be doing bag work. I could be, shooting basketballs at 130, 50 beats per minute for an hour. That would fit. All of those things would fit in there. What I love to do, and I'm gonna just drop down real quick and do is, I think that these are great, is to do mobility circuits. So now I can develop things like improved joint mobility and movement and things like that while I'm still getting a cardiac output method. So that's a viable option too. Now 60 minutes of that is pretty long, but you could easily do 30, 40, 45 minutes, broken up a little bit. Meaning, I'm gonna go down and kind of just do, imagine that I'm in this position, okay? And I'm doing my mobility circuits, and then I start, or movement circuits, you could call them movement circuits, and I start moving a little bit faster. And in a second, I'll check where my heart rate is at. All right, so I'm just making some stuff up right now, right? But let's look at that. Right, so I'm already at about 100 beats per minute plus, okay? So if I sped up the tempo a little bit and my conditioning is pretty good, I'm gonna be at 130. And if I was just doing that nonstop for 45 minutes, obviously many different movements, that will fall in line too. I'd feel great, I'd improve my cardio, and I would be doing a cardiac output method. So you can't get stuck in just running or just biking or any of those different things. There's a lot of different things that you can do to develop that, okay? So that would be a cardiac output method. One that you understand, but it's very, very important, right? It's very important. I actually still do this at least 1 time a week, and what I'll do is put the heart rate monitor on and do different exercises. So I might jump on the Jacob's ladder for 10, 15 minutes, then go straight to the bike, 10, 15 minutes, then pull a sled at like a slow tempo, 10-15 minutes, do jump rope, 10-15 minutes, right? And that'll get me to about an hour, but I'm not gonna be bored, right? And you can do a lot of different things like that, okay? So a lot of different ways to do this. From there, we're gonna go to cardiac power intervals. Now, I'm gonna go through this one. I'm gonna show you this one, guys. So when we're gonna break it down, and I'm actually gonna do it, okay? So this is what this does is improves endurance abilities at high heart rates. So for a lot of people, when they get to higher heart rates, they get completely smoked, right? Because they're not adapted to this, right? So these are usually maxed intensity intervals of 60 to 120 seconds. So what I'm gonna do, I'll take my shirt off in a second, and I'm gonna start doing these, and we'll see where I get to. But I'm gonna push hard, even though I'm not like crazy warmed up. I'm gonna push hard, just so we see what heart rates I get to. And here's the kicker. Rests are pretty long, like 2 to 5 minutes long, or once your heart rate drops to like 120, 130 beats per minute. So we'll actually see, I'll probably do one round, I might even do two, but we'll see how long it takes me to get down to 120, 130 beats per minute. And then you do 4 to 12 reps of this per session, and then 1 to 2 sessions per week, right? I'll explain at the end like how you fit this in, because you're gonna hear me talk about it and then say, well, how many, like, am I supposed to do 20 sessions a week? No, absolutely not. 2 to 3, that's it. And I'll show you how to kind of break this down into your conditioning throughout the week. Okay, so I'm gonna take my hoodie off, and you guys are gonna see me go through at least 1 or 2 sets of this. How long it takes to get down. All right, so you guys saw me go through a set of that. Give an example. I went a little over a minute, about a minute plus, and I went up to 171 beats per minute was my max heart rate on that set. I got under 130 within less than a minute. So it's my little bragging that I do my conditioning. But once again, what I would do, right, I'd probably wait at least 2 minutes, or like I said, until it gets to about 120 beats per minute, which would probably take me 90 seconds to 2 minutes for me. And I'd go again. And I'd go again for these 4 to 12 reps, or should I say sets. And what I'll mention at the end is that, you know, if you're just getting started, start with low to moderate volume of this, and then build up. Okay, so that's the key. Like, do the minimum amount for you to create an adaptation. So you can get away with, obviously, starting with less and then building up to more. Now from here, we're gonna go into another thing called the tempo method, right? Now this is actually gonna be using either weights or body weight. And in a second there, same thing, we're gonna go over, I'm gonna show you something, but what we're gonna do with the tempo method, what we're trying to do is build endurance and make our slow twitch muscle fibers bigger. You know, contrary to belief, slow twitch muscle fibers are very important for explosiveness as well as for longer steady state stuff. So we do want to make them grow, right? So we want to oxidate the fast twitch muscle fibers, and we want to make the slow twitch muscle fibers grow. So the tempo method is where we'll do that. And what we'll do is we're going to use a lift. In this case, I'm going to suffer through a squat. And we're going to do a 2-second eccentric, so down, 2-second concentric, right? Without ever fully constant motion, no pauses. So I'm never going to lock out. So when I do a squat, I'm going to come down, I'm not going to pause, I'm going to come up, I'm not going to lock out. I'm going to go right back down, keeping that smooth tempo, okay? Constant motion, no pauses, no holding your breath. So I'm going to be breathing while I'm doing it and not creating that tension through holding my breath. So sets will be about 8 to 12 reps. So you can think how about 4 to 5 seconds per rep, per rep with 12 reps is about a minute long, maybe even a little bit more than a minute per set, right? With no more than 40 seconds between the rest periods. And you do 3 to 5 sets and then do 3 to 4 exercises. So if I was doing a full body training session, I might do a squat, I might do, for instance, some type of row. I could do a RDL and then do some type of push, for example, right? So that would be 4 exercises. I'd do 3 to 5 sets. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna do a couple, right? I'm gonna do a couple of sets just to show you guys when we start. So I'm gonna bring, obviously, my phone with me, kind of check my heart rates on this. And each set must be done to complete exhaustion and failure. What I mean by that is, like, at the beginning, you're gonna play around a little bit with that as far as, you know, what weights you have to use. But if you get done and you feel like, oh man, I could have kept going with that, well, you gotta go heavier, right? It has to be challenging enough to where in that 60 to 70 second range, you know, you're smoked, right? You're done. So we're gonna go and do the tempo method. In a second here, you're gonna see an example of it. So that was the tempo method, and you guys saw me use the RDLs for it. And you gotta be, you know, obviously pay attention, pay mind to things like limiting factors like grip. I went with a pretty heavy weight. So like I said, I do probably, you know, 5 sets of that, break, do a different exercise. But you can see that smooth tempo, right? We're going 1001, 1002, 1001, 1002. I didn't lock out completely, right? So that was just an example of that I would say tempo method that builds those slow twitch muscle fibers. Okay, maybe a better example would have been, you know, doing a squat. At least I wouldn't have any grip issues, but nonetheless, like I said, giving you guys examples of, you know, those 4 different exercises. Could be a squat, RDL, a, you know, dumbbell bench, or a push-up depending on your levels, and some type of row variation, for example, for a full body workout. Now from here, we're going to go into the high intensity continuous training method. And what I love about this is like not really talked about much, but you know, I think it was Val Nasetkin that I did a lot. I read a lot of the Russian, probably all of it, I would say, you know, from Zatsiorsky to Verkhoshansky to Nasetkin and all that stuff. But then I got it reintroduced in Joel's course, in Joel's book. And what this does is, it's a unique way of like adding high intensity plus high volume, right, which is a high stimulus. But the way that you do it is, I mean, first of all, it creates higher oxygen utilization and increased endurance of the fast twitch muscle fiber. So most cardio, right, when you think about it, like steady state, slower, so on and so forth, well, this adds a speed/load component to it along with the duration of it. So you're training those fast twitch muscle fibers to endure, right, to be able to, like, if you're in any type of sport, to be able to endure deeper into, you know, for me, basketball, like the 4th quarter or the football game or whatever, because those high fast twitch muscle fibers are conditioned to be able to do it. Okay, so while like my favorite actually thing to do here is like a Kaiser bike, which I'm just getting because you can crank up the intensity. So imagine if I was on a Kaiser bike and I'm sitting down on a Kaiser bike and I'm cranking up the tension, and then every pedal, it's very, very heavy, but I'm gonna push it down explosively, and then it's gonna take me a couple seconds to do the other one, and push down explosively. So I'm not pedaling super fast because it's impossible, right? But I'm pushing down crazy hard and explosively, and then the next one, and then the next one, right? So essentially what we're doing is, you know, like I said, you spin bike, a Versa climber, you know, ramping up the resistance on that one, lunges up a steep hill are great, biking up a steep hill, pulling a sled, or pulling a sled up a steep hill, But box step-ups, and I'm gonna show you guys the box step-ups and how that would look like, can also be used. So it's maximum resistance. When I say low speed, it means low cadence, right? I'm gonna explosively, it's gonna be a lot of resistance, so I would actually load this even more than with the weight vest, and I'll explosively push up, step back down. My cadence is gonna be slower. You guys are gonna see how it is. So on a spin bike, it'll be 20 to 30, reps per minute. So think about that, 60 seconds, 20 reps every 3 seconds. So it's explode, push that strong, and then 1, 2, 3, boom, 1, 2, 3, right? So I'm gonna do the same on step-ups. So you're going 10 to 20 minutes per set, and then 1 to 2 sets per workout. So that means 20, 30, 40 minutes somewhere, right? And I say when I say once to twice a week, it really depends on what type of, what you're training for. But this would be at least once a week. I do these once a week. Most of the time, I have a lot of our clients that are doing these, right? And they're actually great for recovery. They're great for recovery, but they're also building work capacity and increasing high threshold motor unit conditioning, right? So I'm gonna take the mic off. I'm gonna show you guys about a minute, maybe even 2, just going through this. But like I said, when you see me do these step-ups, I would be doing these step-ups for 20 minutes nonstop at the cadence that you're gonna see me do them. So you guys saw me doing that. I focused on every step, being explosive, right? But you saw my cadence. It was like, as I stepped up, 1, 2, 3, explode. 1, 2, 3, explode. And I'd probably load that more, right? I would put chains on there, heavier weight vest. But once again, doing that for 20 minutes, like the way that I'm doing it right now is 20 minutes. I have a break and then I do another 20 minutes, right? So, like I said, you can start on the lower side of this. And my heart rate was up to about 160. I'd actually, I would wanna stay away from the anaerobic threshold, right? So I'd probably wanna stay 160 and below on that, but I was right about there. But you guys saw that example. Like I said, you could be doing it with the examples that I gave. I do really like, you could do it at home. If you have any type of spin bike where you can turn the resistance up, that's one of the great ways to do it. So, put my phone back real quick right here. So the next one we're gonna talk about is another one that it's a love-hate relationship. It's the threshold method. Okay, so it is exactly what it sounds like. Everyone has an anaerobic threshold, and while some of it is genetic, it can be highly trained. And so what we do here is we're trying to increase the aerobic system maximum ATP production, regeneration, so more power can be produced. Right, so I'll give you an example, okay? In an MMA fight, you see guys that are, jacked and big, and in the first round, they start punching, right? And they have tons of power, and then they gas out, right? What they do is they go into their anaerobic zone where they can't stay for too much, and they're burning all this glycogen, and they're zapping out, but they cannot produce as much power in their aerobic zone. So tons of power, right? They're anaerobic, they zap out, and then you see these weak punches, round 2, they get completely gassed and they're done. Where you see somebody like my buddy Demetrius Johnson, who's one of the most conditioned guys and was trained, and is still like the conditioning that Joe put out. He's in the 5th round throwing power like crazy, like almost like in the 1st round. So that is what this allows you to do. Now, the thing about the threshold training is that you do have to figure out your anaerobic threshold, at least kind of. And the best way to do it, honestly, is to just do a gas exchange test. You can go to a lab, it's about $75 to $125. not practical. It's been a while since I've done it, actually, since my pro day still. But if you really want to kind of geek out and get your exact number, that's what you do. Now, if not, there's a way to do this, okay? And that is to do some type of, I would say, high intensity work for three 5-minute rounds. And so, like for me, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put on my gloves and like, I'm gonna whale at a bag, right? I'm just gonna do sparring. So imagine it could be like 5 minutes of like hard sparring. It could be 5 minutes of hard basketball one-on-one, like really like nonstop, meaning, you know, it's like go play, you're playing, boom, bucket, right back at it, right? Like, so it just has to be like really, really high, and you have to wear a heart rate monitor and look at the average heart rate per round, and then average it out over the course of those 3 rounds, right? So without counting your 1-minute breaks, so you're gonna do 5-minute rounds, 1-minute break, and you take your average heartbeat per minute of those rounds without the rest break. So basically, it's good to reset. I mean, if you have a heart rate monitor, it'll be pretty easy for you to do that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna do 1 round for shits and giggles. You guys will see me wailing on the bag a little bit. Tyler will chop it up to make it look fantastic, although I am doing a lot of boxing training right now. But the point of it is that like, we're gonna calculate, because the thing about the threshold method is that you can't just, most people, they're not really doing it right because they don't know even tentatively their threshold. Because then once you train, okay, you wanna be +5 beats per minute within that heart rate. So I'm gonna give you an example. So let's say my average is gonna be 172 in those rounds. I'm making it up. I'd wanna be within 179 to 165 in my training. And then I choose, exercises you can choose is sparring, running, cycling, playing ball at a high intensity. And you do 3 to 10 minutes per rep, meaning 3 to 10 minute rounds, and then you do 2 to 5 rounds of that, okay? Once to twice a week. So what you're doing is you're training for your aerobic capacity to regenerate at threshold. So as you train yourself, it means that you can create more power in aerobic zone before kind of going over into the anaerobic threshold, right? So I'm gonna put my gloves on. I'm gonna do 1 round at 5 minutes so I can be honest and we can kind of look at where I'm at with my heart rate. I'll make sure that I'm going hard in the paint and we'll see where I'm at. All right, guys, don't judge me when I'm doing it. But I was about 168, 170 beats per minute for that round. So I would take a minute break. I would do 2 more rounds like that and go hard in the paint. And then I'd average out what my heart rate was for those rounds to kind of find my tentative, I would say, threshold. And once again, right, at least now we're getting some, and like I said, I got this from Joel's. He's done so much testing of this with fighters and endurance athletes, and really found that it's a pretty good measure. Like I said, it's not as precise as doing a gas exchange test, which is best, but it does give you this good tentative number that you can work around. And then train, like I said, +5, so I'd be training at about 175, 163 beats per minute if I went off that 1 round, obviously. And I do that for 3 to 10 minutes, okay? And take a break, and then do that for 2 to 5 sets, right? And that would improve my my threshold. So depending on the sport, like I said, look, this could be life. If you like hiking a lot and you're hiking for long periods of time, you'll be able to hike much longer, doing something like a mailbox peak that has high steps or whatever, and stay in that aerobic zone. So don't just think of this as like, oh, well, this is just athlete talk. Absolutely not. Okay, this is just being a better functioning human being, a healthier human being that can recover faster, that's more resilient, that can do more shit without getting tired or getting beat up. Okay, so from here, that's gonna take us to high resistance intervals. And what we're doing here is, this is actually one of my, let's say, more, I would say I do love this method. And what we're doing here is, we're doing short explosive bursts, 5-6 seconds. I like to go sometimes even more, like 8 to 10. And what we're training is, once again, is to get that high speed, high velocity, high power output, and then we're gonna rest for like 40 to 50 seconds, right? I usually just do like 52-8s or 50-10s here. This stuff is good on woodway, you know, if you're inside. Obviously we got a lot of turf here, that's what I'm gonna show you. Hill sprints, you know, sleds, all those are viable. And once again, you know, adding some resistance here, having a hill is great. I would prefer, you know, if possible, I'd prefer that. Doing stuff, like I said, you know, weighted power. Actually, I'll just probably show you guys explosive with a weighted power, you know, about 8 seconds. And using heart rate as a gauge, you know, that's ideal, right? Ideal is using heart rate as a gauge and letting it drop below 135. The reason why I say that is because if somebody, you know, if you have somebody doing high resistance intervals and they're doing their 6 to 8 seconds and they get a 40-second break, but they're not recovered yet, you know, their heart rate's still at 150 beats per minute, right? Then we're not getting the I would say, the adaptation that we want. That's why heart rate monitors are ideal, and that's why I use Morpheus, obviously, which plugs in HRV and a lot of other variables that helps me with my training, my conditioning. But it's because it gives you, like, imagine going to the gym and like never tracking your weights, right? That's the equivalent of not having heart rate monitors for your training, right? It's like you're just guessing all the time, how are you gonna get the adaptation that you want? So basically, overall heart rate stays under the anaerobic threshold, right? We don't wanna go past that, whatever anaerobic threshold is for you, but for me, it's gonna be like, I don't wanna go past 170, you know, 175 beats per minute there, right? And this is great for endurance. Once again, it's great for endurance of the fast twitch muscle fibers. So you're able to stay explosive throughout, you know, a period of time, like basketball game, football game. You know, it's the fourth quarter and you're still really explosive for those 6 seconds. And we're gonna do anywhere from 15 to 25 reps. Once again, once to twice per week. It depends on what you're training for. You can dive deeper into Joel's course, or like if you're training with us, I break that down and explain that to you. So I'm just gonna show you guys probably like 2 rounds of this. And I'm gonna start here on this side. I'm gonna use my heart rate monitor to get me under 135 beats per minute. And I'm gonna go again so you just guys see this method at work. Bring it back down again. All right. All right, guys, so you saw that. You saw the repeats. Like, that was probably, like I said, I think it was 8 seconds-ish. I'm down to push it to like 10, even maybe a little bit longer sometimes. Like, I'll never go over 12 seconds, but that 6 to 10 second range is pretty crisp. Like I said, 15 to 25, right? Rounds of that. And once again, what we do there is we're conditioning those high, fast twitch fibers, right? A lot of people don't do that. They just do one form of cardio. So it's either, high intensity intervals, circuits, nonstop, or steady state cardio. But we have to understand cardio on a deeper level. And so what I wanted to do today was share some of these methods, right? And of course, we don't have so much time to go so deep into this, and this is why I recommend either studying this through different channels. I'm going to be putting out more content around this. I promise that's very applicable, but this way you actually see it in action, and you can mix it up. And I'll tell you at the end of it all, like, what's probably a good idea. If you're like, I'm not sure, I'll tell you what a good idea is to do. But from there, we're going to go to one of the last two methods in kind of like the aerobic training that you can work on, and that's aerobic plyometrics. So what it's doing is introducing aerobic abilities to fast twitch fibers. Now, I wouldn't recommend this method if you don't have some good baseline level of strength. So if you're just kind of starting on your fitness journey, or just getting back into it, this probably wouldn't be one of the things that you start with doing. I'm actually a big fan of doing a block, or maybe even two. Imagine doing like 5 weeks of more of a baseline aerobic capacity based stuff, and then from there going into these faster twitch fiber endurance things, right? So just kind of a quick tip there. But I do love this method, and it's great for anybody. Like, listen, if you're strength training and you're doing some cardio, but you're a weekend warrior, play flag football, tennis, basketball, like that's one of the highest risks of injury, Achilles tears, knees, so on and so forth. And so you want to have a training program that builds you up and prepares you for that, so you stay, first of all, injury free, second of all, so you perform well, third of all, so that you recover fast, and you can come and like whoop everybody's ass, and they're like, damn man, what you been doing, right? So like that's part of the goal here. So here what we're gonna do, okay? This is things like double leg bounds, explosive push-ups, med ball throws, and what I'm gonna show you guys on a low box, for me, they're moderate intensity. This is not massive, super high intensity, max plyos, okay? It's more conditioning these fibers. And so what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna do about 8 to 10 reps. I'm just gonna do these like hops onto the box and off of the box for 10 reps. And then I'm gonna rest for 10 to 15 seconds, and then I'm gonna do it again. And so essentially, like, I'm gonna do 8 to 10 reps, rest for 10 to 15 seconds, but in all, I would do sets of 5 to 10 minutes, and then 1 to 3 sets. Does that make sense? So let's say I was just starting this off. I do 8 to 10 hops, rest for 15 seconds, do 8 to 10 hops again, rest 15 seconds, and so on until I reach 5 minutes. And then I take a break, and I do anywhere from like 8 to 10 minutes or 5 to 6 minutes of active recovery, and I do it again. I do it for 1 to 3 sets, right? Once again, I say from this to that because, of course, it depends on your goals and your fitness level, all these things like that. So I'm gonna put this at an angle. You guys can kind of see this, right? And so this is not a big intensity for me. It's moderate. I'm gonna bounce into it, right? So here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Moving around. Resting a little bit more, probably 5 more seconds. This is moderate, okay? I just did 8 that time, right? So now watch, I'm gonna take another 15 seconds, and I'm gonna just do 6, 7 explosive push-ups. Now for most people, if they don't have very, very good strength power levels, I would rather do a med ball, okay? And I might throw it to, like, lay on the ground, throw it to myself, throw it against the wall explosively, bounces back to me. But I'm just gonna do push-ups because it's a little more convenient while I'm here. So explosive. And once again, I'd rest for my 15 seconds, and I'd do it again. And I'd keep doing it for 5 to 10 minutes. And of course, you have to have a certain level of strength and conditioning to be able to do it for that long, but that is why we end up, I will say, progressing. like I said at the beginning, do the minimum amount to get the adaptation. Big mistake in all training programs is that people start with too much too fast. Oh man, all right, I'm gonna go to the higher end of this. Why? Why not do less, get the result? Once the result starts kind of slowing down, now you start adding, right? It's a much better tactic. So, last but not least, let's see. Oh, explosive repeats. All right, I'm gonna go and grab me a kettlebell, and I'll be back in a second for this one. All right, so you guys just saw that method in play, aerobic plyometrics, love it. And there's actually two. The last one I'm going to talk about is something that kind of Charlie Francis talked about first, but I really love the explosive repeat method. Once again, you notice that it kind of falls into different buckets. This is another one where we're training those fast twitch muscle fibers to be able to regenerate faster. So here what's key is like each rep has to be as explosive as possible. Many times when people do this, they're so used to, so in my small group personal training, when we train, people are a lot of times coming from backgrounds where they might have just done a lot of circuit training, right? And when you do a lot of circuit training, you get fatigued and you can't really produce a lot of force. So everything is kind of at this same intensity. So we do these methods inside of our small group personal training. I mean, of course, in our individual and semi-private, of course, we program completely individually, but within a small group, we alternate these throughout the week, different methods. And at the beginning, people are so used to kind of not producing a lot of force because they're used to, 40 minute, 60 minute nonstop beat you down circuit workout, which doesn't develop these different energy systems. So when we start doing them and we do 10 to 20 seconds of really explosive, powerful work with longer breaks, everybody's like, holy shit, why am I so tired from 15 seconds of work and I have a minute rest, right? And I start explaining that it's a different energy system, right? That's not trained. And as they develop them, their conditioning gets better, their strength gets better, their performance gets better, right? So we have to really look into this and understand, everything here is built around how the body works, not just a guessing game and just throwing everything into the cardio bucket. That's not what we want to do. So what's key with these is each rep has to be as explosive as possible. There can be no pauses in between reps, right? So I'm going to land, I'm going to load, I'm going to explode, right? I'm right back into it. So this is how fast can fast twitch muscle fibers recover, right? It's so important. And you've seen probably some explosive athletes that get really, really, really zapped, after halftime or third quarter or fourth quarter, right? But they're crazy explosive, but their gap just falls, right? What I mean by is their top speed to their average speed just drops so much because they don't have this. So what we're gonna do is 1 to 2 series of 6 to 10 sets per exercise. And then 1 to 3 exercises per workout. So to explain this, right? 1 to 2 series of 6 to 10 sets per exercise. So we'll do 6 to 10 sets, and then we'd have 8 to 10 minutes of active rest between. So active rest could be, I'm going on an Aerodyne bike and kind of just active rest, where I'm just moving around, I'm not just sitting down and not doing anything. Maybe I'm doing some mobility work in between for those 8 to 10 minutes. And then I do another set of 6 to 10. And that might be my kettlebell deadlift jumps. And then I may do med ball work, or I might do explosive push-up stuff, or explosive, I would say, what are the exercises for that specific thing? I could do a rotational, landmine punch through. There's a lot of different ways that we could do it. And I do 1 to 3 exercises per workout. And another thing too, that before I go into this, doing it, is how would I progress something like this? Well, let's look at it. Week 1, I do 8 to 10 seconds of work, and then have a whole 60 seconds of rest here, right? Week 2, I might do 10 to 12 seconds of work, so my work period goes up, and my rest period goes down to 40, 45 seconds. I'm gonna cut it down. And then week 3, 12 to 14 seconds of work, and my rest period might be as low as 30 seconds, right? But what we're doing is we're training those muscles to adapt to be able to explosively fire for longer with lower periods of time, right? So I'm gonna do a set of about 10 to 12 seconds here. I'll do 2 sets and I'll speed it up, so I won't do the full break of 60 seconds. I'll do 10 to 12 seconds of work, and then we'll imagine that I'm in week 3 and I'm gonna do only 30 seconds of rest on this one, okay? cha, 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 ha. Whew. All right, I'll do my 30 seconds of rest. The things I do for you guys. But I think it's important that you see the work being done so you have an idea of how your training session is going to go. I know sometimes, I'm a learn by doing person, so I dig into the books, I dig into the science, into the theory, and then I got to do it. I got to do it myself, I got to coach people, I got to be around it, and that's how I learn the most. So that's why I'm trying to take you through this so you guys can see it. All right, ready? Round two. Cha, 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 cha. All right, guys. That's all you get from me right now. It's 2 rounds. So let's check where we're at. About 150, 155 to 160. And like I said, this is dependent also on your conditioning levels. For some people, their heart rate may not come down, which is for a long time, which is why it's important to do heart rate monitoring, and also why it's so important to build an aerobic base, right? So, and starting with, remember we started with the road work, right? We started here talking about cardiac output method. We talked about cardiac power intervals. And actually, one of the, this one I didn't even have it on my to-do kind of reminder list, but it's tempo intervals. And to kind of feed back into this, why it's so important to build an aerobic base, imagine a pyramid, right? So imagine the base of the pyramid is your aerobic capacity, okay? So just because you're like, hey, I do high intensity training and I go into boot camp, right? That doesn't mean you're gonna have a good base of aerobic capacity, okay? Because the peak, how high the pyramid goes, that's your anaerobic. So your base determines how much capacity you're gonna have, which is why you have to train it, right? Just going and doing high intensity interval stuff, first of all, most people burn out from it, they can't recover from it, they stop getting results, but it also hinders all this stuff that we're talking about, okay? So there has to be a mix and a proper mix for each person based on their goals. But tempo intervals, Charlie Francis kind of brought this up, where sprinters, obviously Charlie Francis, trainer Ben Johnson, one of the most famous sprint coaches in the world, he would either do high or low, right? The moderate stuff didn't really kick into play. So imagine like tempo intervals, what they do is they build work capacity, okay? Just what we talked about. It builds the bottom of that pyramid. And so what you're doing is you're doing 70%, like he would do it with running, of course, because he has sprinters, but you can do it with a lot of different things. It's 70% intensity for 12 to 15 seconds of work. So imagine me, I'd go 15 seconds of running right now, but it'd be a 70% of my speed, which is not a lot. It's like really working on form, my stride length, feeling good. And then you have 60 seconds of active recovery. So instead of like after the 15 seconds of running, for instance, just doing nothing, like you can move around, walk around, go on an aerodyne bike really slow. Like you're not stopping, you're still moving around, right? So it's 70% and then just active recovery. And you do 15 to 30 minutes of that, 1 to 2 sessions a week. You can do it on your off days. You can even do it after any type of skills training. I mean, look, sometimes you can't have an ideal optimal program. You can do it after your training, okay? But it should be 6 out of 10 on the intensity scale, right? When you leave, you shouldn't be exhausted, you should be feeling good. And what we found is like that these tempo intervals really, they improve recovery, and they also improve, aerobic capacity, okay? So now you might be thinking, first of all, like where do you fit this in? Because I'm gonna show you guys some other stuff in other methods, but I wanna break down this as far as like, you might be looking at that going like, holy crap, where do I fit this in, okay? Well, let's start with this. first of all, first you want to build a good base. So we do things like the cardiac output method, okay? High intensity continuous training. We do tempo intervals, and we'd also do the tempo method, right? Those are, remember, those are more like building the base. And then in the second phase, we'd kind of, not eliminate it, but we cut that down a little bit. And then we'd start doing things like high resistance intervals, explosive repeat method, maybe aerobic plyometrics if you're ready for it, right? So once again, I wanted to present different models for you, methods for you, so you can see me do them, explain how much of what to do, and give you an idea of where to fit this in. Because first of all, if you're somebody that's like, hey, I want to be stronger, improve my general fitness and conditioning, you probably want to do one type of conditioning of each per week, meaning we just covered more of aerobic stuff. So you want to build aerobic conditioning, you want to build anaerobic. Anaerobic is easy for you guys to kind of understand more because right now we're living in a high intensity interval world, right? Like everybody's doing high intensity conditioning. 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, 40, 20. And like, hey, we do it too, right? We do it here too at Vigor Ground. But we structure things so that we're not just smashing people into the ground and people are getting better results because we're doing aerobic training, anaerobic training, and also anaerobic galactic training. And like I said, you're gonna see some of those methods in a little bit. All right, so the second energy system is the anaerobic lactic system. This is actually what you see a lot of people training, like unknowingly sometimes, which you see a lot of circuits, a lot of intervals. Once again, not that they're wrong. It's not that they're wrong. It's just building a complete system. And one of the things that we talk a lot about, ideally you do 2 very high intensity training sessions, 2 moderate, and then 2 recovery sessions. So think about the aerobic work that we talked about. That would be kind of the recovery that I'm talking about. This would be your kind of, I'd say moderate-ish, depending on how hard you go. And then, your strength training, your explosive stuff, or even like super high intensity conditioning would be on the high end. My point being is that if you're doing 5 days a week of crushing yourself into the ground, you're probably not going to get results long term. Not probably, you're not. It's just not, period. Because once again, the body adapts a certain way, recovers a certain way, and so that's why I also wanted to cover this. Now, we're going to go over 4 methods here. I'm going to go through a couple of them with you, and as far as because one of the things we teach a lot at Vigor Ground is understanding intensities, right? Understanding intervals. So when we're doing for instance, in our team training, in our group training circuits, and we're doing 40 seconds of work and short rest periods, that's going to look a lot different than 15 seconds of work with a minute rest. But those 15 seconds are going to be crazy intense. So it's teaching intensities and teaching this and educating on it so that our clients understand why they're doing what they're doing, and also go like, you know what, I'm not going to crush myself 5-6 days a week doing high intensity interval training, and then they start getting better results. Like they're stronger, they're faster, they're more conditioned, they're leaner because, once again, science. Right, so first one, lactic power intervals, right? So lactic power is important in high energy output phases of sport and life. The more power that you create, the better. So think like wrestling, MMA, I go for 20 to 40 seconds in just a burst of crazy high intensity, right? Where I'm wrestling with somebody. You've ever done that where, even as a kid, when you wrestle with somebody for 40 seconds, you're like you can't even fight anymore because both of you are exhausted, right? That's that. So we're combining maximum intensity plus speed. And usually these will be 20 to 40 seconds long, and but we'll take long rest periods. So it's 20 to 40 seconds, 1 to 3 minutes of rest. And we're gonna do 3 reps per series, right? So one cluster, so imagine I'm gonna go like 20 to 30 seconds of this weighted power. I'm gonna go bananas. I'm gonna go all out on it. I'm gonna rest 1 minute, I'm gonna do it again, so you guys see that. But I do 3, and then after that, I would take an 8 to 15 minute period of break. It's a pretty long break. For most people, they're like, oh man, that's a really long break. But this is how we train if we're trying to develop lactic power intervals. Okay, and we do 2 to 4 series. So altogether, we do anywhere from 6 to 12 rounds of that. but massively high intensity, right? I might lose my marbles a little bit right here. So that's lactic power intervals, right? And that's what I'm gonna show you guys right now. All right, so we're gonna use this prowler. So what I'm gonna do is, let's say I'm gonna go for 30 seconds on this one, for 30 seconds, right? We'll see where my heart rate is at on this too. I'm gonna start in about 13 seconds. But I'm gonna put maximum power and intensity, and actually I'm gonna slide back a little bit so I got a little more distance here. We're gonna do 2 rounds with a legit 1 minute break, see how much I can drop my heart rate here. Whew. So we still monitor that heart rate and try to get it down, but I'm gonna keep that break at about a minute, minute and a half. Below 135 right now. Under 135. I'm gonna do one more round. So I would do one more round of this, and then I'd have an 8 to 15 minute, I would say break / active recovery. And repeat that for 2 to 4, right? As you can see, it's been a bit of a doozy doing all this conditioning today. But the reason why I wanted to show you this, guys, is because I really pushed that, right? I really went all out for those 30 seconds. And most of the time, what you'll see is that most people will not put in that much effort, okay? Which then brings us to method number 2, which is lactic capacity intervals, okay? Very similar. Now, there's a difference between power or capacity. Right, where here, lactic power is important in the high energy output phases. Here, we're looking at the ability to sustain the anaerobic energy. So, we're shifting from power to capacity. So now the work sets are going to 90 and 120 seconds. So, minute and a half to 2 minutes long. So imagine I'm pushing that prowler for 90 seconds to 2 minutes, which you guys won't see me do today, but I would have a different tempo. It'd actually be, to be honest with you, I'd rather push it for 2 minutes at a slower pace, and then our rest interval gets cut down to a minute, 1 to 2 minutes. Right? Now we're working capacity over power and speed, maximum intensity plus speed. And then we do 3 reps per series, same 2 to 4. But now our active recovery, instead of being 8 to 15, is 4 to 6, okay? And goal is complete fatigue, right? Meaning, like, if you do that for 2 minutes, man, you are smoked, right? But it's a different type of smoke. So lactic power intervals, lactic capacity intervals. Now, one of the reasons I bring this up is because people have different weaknesses, right? So we look at what does the person need, okay? And what are their weaknesses? And we develop the program that kind of, I would say, fills in those weaknesses so that you can be better as an athlete, or I could say an athlete of life, right? If you're somebody looking at, oh, I don't play sports, it doesn't matter, right? We still want to adapt that conditioning program to you, okay?
Number 3 comes into circuit training, right? Where basically we're training the ability to maintain repetitive explosiveness. Now, based on the sport and everything else, it'll depend on these intervals. We do quite a bit of this in our interval team training, but this is mostly what people do, okay? And this is, notice how many methods I've already covered when it comes to cardio, and yet most people just do this, right? At very, very high intensities, crush themselves. So here, we can do both, increase lactic power and capacity, right? Now there's endless ways to do this, but there should be some guidelines of what we're doing. Here are some pretty good guidelines. It's 15 to 40 seconds of work and 10 to 30 seconds of rest, okay? 1 to 3 series of 6 to 10 sets per exercise. So imagine, actually this looks a lot like what we did in team training on Saturday, which was 10 exercises, and we'd go do different intervals for them. We would give you an example, we did 30-30 in this scenario, and it would be 1 to 3 exercises per workout. So, meaning we'd do like 3 rounds of that, okay? You have 6 to 8 minutes of active rest. And give you an example of like how, like we actually undulate throughout the session, but if I was training a client in semi-private, or when we're doing our small group personal training, this is how we progress it, where week 1, maybe 15 seconds of work, 30 seconds of rest. Week 2, 20 seconds of work, 20 seconds of rest. Week 3, 30 seconds of work, 15 seconds of rest. And week 4, 40 seconds of work and only 10 seconds of rest. Right, so just like anything else, we want to be able to progress conditioning and be able to track it. And like I said, that's why heart rate monitors are fantastic. If we had another person pushing that prowler for the same amount of time, all at the intensity, I guarantee you our heart rates will be completely different. I would recover faster or slower if they're a very conditioned elite athlete. I may be, recovering slower than them. Most people I'll recover faster than from because I do a bunch of this. So if we kind of prescribe the same stuff, it doesn't really make sense, which is also why, we're moving into something that is going to be pretty interesting in this year that I'm working with Joe Jamieson on, which is something called the grid, where we'll be able to, I would say, individualize people's training even within group training. It's something mind-blowing stuff, a lot of work that we're working on. All right, so from here, check this out. Static dynamics. I'm throwing this one in there because this one is painful, right? But man, it gets results if you can withstand this. So this takes the lactic system to the edge, right? But that's how you basically improve the lactic system. You guys saw our threshold training, like this will push you to the edge. Now what this is, and I'm gonna give you an example. I'll actually take my phone and see if I can make it through 3 minutes. And I'll do push-ups just because I don't want to necessarily get, usually I do this with dumbbells, like dumbbell bench press, some type of squat where it's not grip dependent. But what it ends up being is moderate speed reps, okay? So imagine that like I'm going to do a goblet squat, or, I had a pretty light barbell and I did 2 reps. So I'm controlling it down, moderate speed 1, moderate speed 2, and then the third one, I'm doing a 10-second isometric hold. Creating tension, keeping that tension, 10 seconds, and again I go moderate speed, control down, moderate speed, and come back down, and again do 10-second isometric holds, okay? So the weight is gonna be pretty light, so I can do about 120 pounds on a dumbbell bench for about 10 reps. I may be doing 40 to 50 pounds on the dumbbell bench, doing 2 reps, 10-second pause, 2 reps, 10-second pause. And doing that for 3 to 10 minutes, right? 3 to 10 minutes with good form, okay? So obviously you can see, like I said, I'm gonna go for, I'm pretty smoked, but I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna drop down to even my knees and do some regression type stuff, but I'm gonna just try to keep going for 3 minutes and show you guys some dumbness and pain. But the thing is, the muscle groups are worked are the ones that are going to increase lactic capacity. So if I'm going to do push-ups, it's going to be chest and shoulders. If I'm going to do squats, it's going to be legs. Then you want to do 1 to 2 sets per exercise, starting with 3 to 5 minutes long, right? You'd have a long break in between, obviously. Trust me, this is also something that I would plug into a regular workout. This might be the last part of my workout. So, and there's a lot of different ways to do it. But here it goes. I'm going to take my phone. I'm monitoring my heart rate a little bit. I'm going to shoot for 3 minutes. If it looks shitty, Tyler will probably cut it out or like mix it up a little bit, make me look better or something like that. All right. Push-ups are actually harder than double bench press because I have to use core, I have to use my whole body weight, but why not give it a go? So 1 rep, 2 reps in 10 seconds. One rep, 2 reps. And time. Whew. Anyways, that's 1 set of the static dynamics. Like I said, that probably wouldn't be my #1 choice because there's a lot of things that can give out, like core. I could have dropped to the knees. Dumbbell bench presses are fine. RDLs are not bad because you have to go with a lighter weight anyways. Squats are fine. Rows can be fine. There's a lot of different ways, right? But once again, these muscle groups work will increase the capacity, not necessarily the whole system. So try those out and see how it goes. Now, once again, this is, like I said, this is anaerobic lactic training and different methods to increase that. And like I'll share at the end, after I cover the last method, you know, I'll keep revamping this, that some of the lessons should be here. If you're not doing some of these things, you should be, and it'll improve your conditioning, it'll improve your fitness, it'll improve your recovery. Because remember, the reason why we get stronger, why we grow muscle, is because we can recover, right? We create the stimulus, and then we have the recovery. So you'll see me going through, actually more like explaining the last phase, which is the anaerobic alactic phase, another one that I love that people should develop, and wrap this whole thing up with the different methods and the 3 different energy systems that you should use in your training. So last but not least, we're gonna talk about the anaerobic alactic system, which there's 5 methods here, and some of them, the thing is, even though we're talking about conditioning today, listen, everything is energy system training. When you're lifting weights for 10 seconds, you're training your energy system, right? When you're lifting weights for a minute, you're training your energy system. Like, we gotta start understanding that, like, the body adapts to how we train it, and all of it falls under the line of this. But I wanted to start with the lactic power intervals, which are similar to what I mentioned in the aerobic intervals, aerobic power intervals, right? But alactic power intervals, like, basically what we're trying to do is maximum ATP regeneration by the alactic system. Now, what that means is, like, this is true, pure 100% intensity. So when you see Usain Bolt running a 9.7 like 100-meter sprint, right? He is constantly in the anaerobic alactic system, right? Producing ATP. Like, it usually lasts somewhere to around 10, 12, so it might say 15 seconds, but 7 to 10 seconds, right? And it's 100% intensity. While those aerobic intervals weren't 100% intensity. So how might that look like? You know, a part of the year, I try to, I would say try, I do this, but like I would love to do this throughout the year. I have some access to a track pretty close by, but this is what I'll do on my track days, you know, where I'll go and I'll sprint, you know, I'll do a thorough warm up, and then obviously you can do hill sprints, you know, sprints are great for this. You can do, you know, squat jumps, a lot of different things like that. Bounding, you know, explosive push-ups fall in line with that. But for me personally, I love doing sprints. And true 100% intensity, because if you don't really push that, you know, that intensity super, super high, then you're not really training that system. And so, you know, you're gonna rest as long as 2 to 5 minutes, maybe even longer. You know, if you're really, really fast, it might be longer. But the main thing is like getting your heart rate kind of below 120. So it's like true recovery, right? Because when you guys saw me talk about the aerobic intervals, it's like, hey, get your heart rate, you know, rest for this long, get your heart rate maybe under 135. Here, under 120, like you really want to have like almost pretty much complete recovery, because we're training those super fast twitch muscle fibers to be able to recover. I do like active rest. So things like, you know, depending on who the person is, but once again, that could be jump rope, it could just be doing a little bit of shadow boxing and stuff, right? Any of those. And only 5 to 6 reps per set. And the thing is, 2 series, so meaning 2 different exercises maybe, right? So maybe you're gonna do sprints and bounds, or maybe you're gonna do explosive push-ups and sprints. But like true 100% intensity. And if you are gonna do 2 different exercises in that workout, you're gonna take 8 to 15 minutes of rest between, you know, moving on to the next exercise, right? And so this is like that, like true top intensity, top power, top velocity work that we're talking about. Very, very, very beneficial though, right? For anybody that does any type of, like I said, explosive sport, but just in general too, we want to develop those fibers. Now the second one is alactic capacity intervals. And it's very similar, but here's the thing. I'm not going to spend much time on this because they're very, very genetically influenced. You know, this is, I would say this is one of the things that is the most genetically influenced. And, but if you've never trained it before, you can see improvement, right? But if like I had to bet on it, this is the one that I wouldn't use as much with clients. But it is something that we've done before where it was kind of almost like the hidden gem, where it's something that they never trained, and we were able to improve it and increase their power and conditioning. So this one is 10 to 15 seconds, so it's a little bit of a longer, I would say, interval, and then you rest 20 to 90 seconds. It's a pretty big gap, but like I said, it depends on the fitness levels of the person, right? And you're doing 10 to 12 working sets. Same thing, you got those long breaks, and then you have 2 to 3 exercises, and you're resting 8 to 10 minutes between exercises. Same exercises as here, just you can see different rest intervals, right? But we're training that lactic capacity in this one. And like I said, if I could take any one of those out, that would be it. Now from here, then we move into stuff that you might be considering strength training. So maximum effort strength, right? So what are we doing this way? It can increase alactic power output and results in high levels of hormone production that stimulates the biological adaptation. Remember, we said there's an input to the system and then it changes. So when we lift really, really, really heavy weights, it's usually for like not more than 10 seconds, right? We're training that system, activating insane amounts of high threshold motor units in the muscles. We use, you know, major compound exercises, from your squats to your deadlifts to, I mean, all the basic stuff that like I've talked a ton about, like that's what we're using. But it increases neuromuscular recruitment, and it increases contractility of the fibers, right? I know it's getting really geeky. But basically, whenever you're able to either go like really, really heavy or really, really fast, that's great, because once again, it kind of creates that neuromuscular recruitment of the muscles that we want. We're talking about 1 to 5, I would say, reps per set here. You know, longer rest periods, 2 to 5 minutes in between sets. You know, 5, 8 minutes between exercises, a couple times a week. So I love the conjugate method. So I'm usually doing like, you know, this is just the split that I love to do, which is, you know, lower body max effort day, and then I'll have an upper body max effort day somewhere throughout the week. And then I'll have I would say a dynamic effort lower body day right now that I'm training to try to jump higher as well. So, but once again, like this improves this, okay? So strength training improves your conditioning. It does, right? So we have to just kind of keep that in mind, that a properly structured strength and conditioning program, that's why it's been called that for a long time for athletes, and I think for general fitness population the same, right? It implements the right amount of strength and the right amount of conditioning for the person to achieve the goal that they want and be, body, usually where it's performance, body composition, health, okay? From here we have the strength and aerobic method. Like Verkhoshansky talks about, if you love geeking out on old Russian manuals like I did, talks about this, where it can do two things. It can increase alactic power and capacity as well as aerobic fitness. And these are like these longer sets, in conjugate training you call it repetition effort method as well. But what you do here is like you actually do 3 to 4 heavy sets, and then you drop with the same exercise, drop down, and instead of doing, you do 3 to 5 heavy reps, and then you go same exercise, 8 to 10 reps, that a little bit lighter weight, more under control, right? So it's the same thing, strength exercises. Essentially what this starts becoming is pretty much just smart strength and conditioning models. And the last one here, and one that you guys see me do pretty often, I share in my IG and stories. A lot of times because I'm crunched for time, it's called the complex method. Some call it the French contrast method. But what that is where you do 2 to 3 sets of, you do a very, very heavy exercise. Essentially 2 to 3 reps at 90-95% of your 1 rep max. Let's just call it heavy, right? So you guys will see me a lot of times where I do a trap bar deadlift followed by something explosive, either jumps or 7 to 10 seconds. You could do a sprint for 7 seconds afterwards, right? Because you get something that's called PAP, post-activation potentiation, right? You lift really heavy, you activate all these muscle fibers, your nervous system, and then you're able to sprint faster, jump higher when you contrast them, right? You have to have maximum acceleration on all reps, and it recruits the maximum amount of muscle, plus it increases the alactic enzymes, which increases alactic power. So you can see how this adapts our body to be able to produce, like I said, more ATP in that time frame, right? Same thing, 2 to 3 exercises per workout, once to twice a week. Once again, this is a part of a smart strength and conditioning workout. So I really wanted to share this because, like I said, many times there's like this bucket, like I lift weights, I do cardio, right? And it's just thrown in a bucket without really understanding like what is it that we want to achieve and how do we put it together, right? We know that if you're training for a marathon for a powerlifting meet, it's probably not the smartest thing to put together, right? But hey, you know what? If you want to build strength and size, those are good. If you want to build strength and speed, those go together. If you want to build, for instance, if you want to get leaner and get stronger, those are good. But getting leaner and building a lot of muscle and getting really conditioned, you can do it to a certain degree, but like you have to have a certain, like mixing everything together gets you it doesn't get you a lot of one thing. It gets you much of nothing usually. And so understanding this really, really, really matters. And I wanted to break it down, especially at the beginning. This makes more sense because I've talked about it a lot more. You guys have seen it. But the other methods, I wanted to do them for you guys to see how they work and also like where you could plug them in. Right now that we've gone through the 3 different, I would say, energy systems and the different methods in them, this is the simplest way to do it. Like if you're watching this, add one, like if ideally you do 3 days a week of conditioning and do one of each, right? And once again, I'm saying this without knowing your individual goals, your fitness levels, what are the weaknesses, all of this stuff. Like a good idea is like, if you're watching this and go like, well, where do I start? Hey, do one of each. Like do something to increase your aerobic capacity. Do something for your anaerobic alactic conditioning and do something for your anaerobic alactic conditioning, right? So meaning, hey, 1 day a week, you guys have seen me, I'll do like these 10-second sprints with long rests 1 day a week. 1 day a week, I'll do some type of interval training, high intensity anaerobic training. And then 1 day a week, it'll be more just building my capacity. I might come here and, like I said, do Jacob's ladder for 10-15 minutes, do the aerodyne bike for 10-15 minutes, pull the sled for 10-15 minutes, jump rope, hit the bag, and do like an hour 15, with lower heart rate. And once again, like I guarantee you, your fitness will get better, you'll be leaner, it'll help you recover from the strength workouts, and just in general, your conditioning will be better. Now, I'm gonna, like I said, do more of this. I know this was like almost a pretty deep tutorial on the different methods. Use them, put them to play. Something that you saw, go and do it, And then let me know in the comment section below, what would you like to see more of if you have any questions about this. And Coach Luke will see you in the next, I would say, educational session. Peace out.